welcome to Upstage Downstage, with him, Richard Platt, seated in the upper circle.
And him, Stephen Rees, typically seated in the cheap seat.
This is the Theatre Podcast, where we discuss productions we've seen,
Things we've liked,
and may not have liked,
giving our complete unprofessional
and non-biased opinions.
So grab a brew,
Take a seat,
and let's raise that curtain. On today's episode, we'll be discussing The Good Person of Szechwan. We saw this production at the Sheffield Crucible on the 25th of March 2023. In its 80th anniversary, Brecht's play is brought up to date in a new version by Nina Segal and directed by Anthony Lau. This is a Sheffield Theatres, ETT and Lyric Hammersmith Theatre production. So Stephen, what's it all about?
In the hustle and bustle of a modern-day metropolis, it's a dog-eat-dog world, and Shen Ti is doing all she can to get by. When three gods reward her hospitality with a life-changing sum of money, Shen Ti opens a tobacco shop and claims the stability she's always dreamed of. But the struggle is not over yet. Forced to question the cost of her own survival, she resorts to scheming and deceit to flourish in a capitalist world.
But first, our post-show opinion!
Chaotically intriguing.
Very colourful, very inventive, and very interesting.
So with all that said, let's
Set the scene!
So Richard, would you like to set the scene for this play, The Good Person of Szechwan?
Keep that in. That's
A different kind of scene.
That was setting a stomach scene.
It was a very different scene opener because I thought you were faffing about what you're doing.
No, I'm just getting a picture while you're talking.
Oh.
You were saying something.
Well, I was, but then because you started doing something,
I was just
I
trying
thought
to...
you were just messing around with the audio.
No, far from it.
Yes. So Leo Wan, Mr. Wang, he was messing around bringing out a paddling pool with his bottles of water into the main stage.
Yeah, I mean...
And that was before that's before it even started, and they had somebody from, I suppose, like one of the usherettes bring stuff to him throughout, and wasn't quite sure if they were still setting the stage up or what was going on.
No, and I suppose to also talk about how it was looking, the actual production, the way it was set. There was 3 ball pits at the front of stage, one on both sides and one at the front, and the set was all a hue of pink. It was a bright pink stage, and what could only be described as there was what looked like hanging pipe lagging at the back of stage in abundance, and it was almost like
But it was effective as strobe lighting when it was lit up.
Hidden within the actual white foam rods that were hanging down, there was actually LEDs within the rods, so it gave a lighting effect. And also what turned out to be entrances and exits through these foam things hanging down. So it gave a bit of a difference. It almost looked like, like a fun house where you walk through a load of things hanging down from the ceiling. It was that sort of effect. Yeah,
and they were upper level on, don't know how high they'd be. Would it be?
It was about 8
2
foot,
meters?
8 foot to 2 meters or whatever.
Yeah, something like that.
It looked like a skate park, really, in a way.
It did, because it had ramps on either side, which was quite comical for whenever the actors joined in the action from above. Yeah. They just sat down and slid down this slide to the action. It always got a laugh, whoever was coming down onto the set.
And they all had a different way of entering the space from those slides as well. So I thought it was cleverly done. It was very empty, bare stage, even though there was levels, as you say, and I think it worked. It worked for this production.
And there was lighting around the outside of the edge of the stage.
Yeah.
So it indicated that whenever someone came into the shop, that you had the sound effect of a shop door open, like it jingled, and then the lights came up as they stepped onto the stage. It's quite immersive for a bare stage kind of a play. Yeah,
and it didn't just use it once, and the lighting was used throughout the production, so it very much had it felt part of the scenery and the set and how they did it as well.
Yes, and at the back of the stage they had chapter numbers, so you could see, well, for those who are familiar with Brecht's work, it's not necessarily done scene by scene but act by act, so I can't remember what he got up to. Was it about 12 acts or something?
It was something like that, yeah.
Yes, so each time it changed, it gave a title heading, and then every now and again when they hit a musical number, you'd have the lyrics up there so you could hear or understand or read what they were singing.
Yeah, there was a couple of moments, though, I would say that it wasn't very bright, those words, so you did struggle to read them at certain points when the lights were on full. The actual...
The strobe lighting.
Well, when there was a lot happening, there was just the odd moment where you couldn't actually read those words because of things that were happening. Overall, it helped sort of know where everything was going, really.
The whole premise of this play this version is about, they relate it to a tobacco industry of selling cigarettes in the capitalist world.
Yeah.
And so those strobe lighting at the back. So when Shen Ti dresses up as her cousin Shaitar and takes a check from this wealthy businessman for perverted gains,
Yeah.
she, as he, uses it to fund a factory to produce cigarettes to live, and the strobe lighting end up being turned into the cigarettes. So they started, in terms of having the workers working in the factory, all they did was put the peachy browny coloured effect of the filter, they wrapped it around the white tubes at the top, so then they started bit by bit building up all those elements that look like a cigarette. A pile of cigarettes.
Yeah, they did.
I'm pleased you're glad you were in.
You
agree with that.
Definitely. Yeah, no, there was a lot of reliance on certain prop pieces and not loads of things. It was just like the cigarette dispenser machine and stuff like that. I think that was there.
Yes, that indicated. Well, when they brought on this cigarette machine, it replicated one of those arcade games when you're trying to get a bunny out of a you put your money in, you're trying to get the arm grabber to get a bunny out. So it was one of those kind of things, and sometimes during the whole proceedings, to try and get away, Shanti would go in and hide in the actual in the glass box with all the cigarettes, but it's there not necessarily as a prop but to represent the shop.
Yeah,
that's what it represented.
I think on another level, I also see it as it was there to represent almost how difficult it is to obtain what you need, because to pick up an individual cigarette with that grabber, it would be like 1 in a million chance of actually getting what you want in a way, because it would be very difficult, and that was also something I noticed.
Like everything's out of reach.
Just too far, just that little bit.
Or
too
if
far.
You put money in and it's so simple to grab it, but
in reality,
without luck or anything, you're probably never going to have
No.
it. It's never going to swing in your direction.
And that's why you almost saw her putting her hand up the machine and taking them out the wrong way.
Yeah,
because it was the only way they were going to get them, because
like
they know
the
that it's not going to work.
Doing bad to get your gains in a way.
Yeah.
It is very indicative of the themes of the play and what it is about. What we start off with this play is the three gods, and they're looking for a very good person. Well, a good person.
Yeah.
And they're trying to find it on Earth.
Yeah.
And that's how they represent. And then they bump into Mr. Wan, and he's collecting bottles of water, but the only reason he can sell water in bottles is to earn money. You get it cheaply and you sell it high to make a profit. If it's raining, everyone's going to get their water.
And fill it themselves.
So he's out of pocket. So it was very much depicting what this was setting out to do, to be, that we were talking about, capitalism and how it can be good or sometimes it can be bad. It's mostly to do with finding the good person and doing a good deed. Now, she was granted £1,000 to have the shop to pay all her bills. But what she did as a good person, she gave a little bit away each time a friend, a neighbour, a business person came in, or a love interest. They always took from her, take all the time, and she gave a bit of everything. But then the moment she had nothing and she wanted something in return to help, they were never there for her.
No.
And so it explored a lot of themes of that and how she had to adopt a persona of her cousin.
Yes.
To fool a lot of people, to become the hard person.
Yeah, to take on the person she wanted to be.
So
but
she'd have to be a bad good person.
Yeah.
To help herself out and remain, try to be good, or at least do certain good deeds.
And she quickly realised that every time people take, they keep taking and keep taking and keep taking. There's no two-way street.
Yes, in each scene there would always be someone coming onto the set,
Yeah.
or coming in wanting to trade or wanting to take money off her or charge her more or fine her, or there was always something going on. So there was always that aspect of somehow she needs money, she can donate some money to somebody else who has a really good cause who needs it, but then there's somebody else on the other side that needs it as well. But who does she give it to? So there was a lot of trying to find money throughout a lot of this play.
Yeah.
And the only way she could get it is by making it herself, by being more strict and not saying yes all the time and helping other people. Sometimes you have to not be a good person to better yourself.
Yeah.
Is this the first time you've seen a Brecht play?
I think in this way, yeah. I suppose I've not really seen a lot of this style of work. So yeah, this will be the first time I've seen something in this way. And it was intriguing, certainly an experience, because there's quite a lot of chaos within a production like this. You've got to focus and listen, a little bit like a Pinter, really. It's got that
all
style.
part of that epic theatre realm, isn't it?
Yeah, it's sort of, you've got to focus and
taking the
sort of take
emotions
reference
out of it, not having the audience participation and letting them think for themselves and take something away from it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it does leave you thinking. It does leave you sort of questioning certain things. But I suppose the message is there. It was written in well, like you've said, Stephen. And I think that sometimes you've got to reflect on it. I mean, how it ends. You learn from you basically. Words fail me now.
Well, there wasn't a resolve for this play because...
No, there wasn't. No, not at all.
They leave it open-ended for you to decide yourself
Yes.
how it finishes.
But it's also, however it's portrayed and what place or time or space that it's set in, you can draw reference from it into normal life. And I think that's the key to this style of production.
You can interpret it in many different ways, a bit like Shakespeare.
Yeah,
You
it
can
is. Yeah,
take
it's very
however you like it.
Yeah, it's very indicative of what happens in the real world, and things are never left to. There isn't happy endings. There's not this. There's a continuation of life. It's like you move on to the next thing in your life that you've got to then deal with, because it's just a progression of a decision you make. It's almost like those things in a book. If you turn a page and you choose to make that decision at the end of that page, it turn 10 pages forward, and that's what starts happening. And I think this is very about that. You know, you never get to the end of a piece like this and it's not like, oh, and that's how it all ends. Happy, you know, we're all done. It's like, no, life carries on.
Yeah,
you know.
It shows societal issues and gives you the option to think about novels and what you've learnt from that and to take something away from it. And they do it in a way where it's entertaining, but you're still left thinking about what the future holds and how you can be, particularly in this play, how you can be a good person.
Yeah, and I can see that different people take different parts of it away or see something in it that would affect them, not everybody.
Well, exactly. I mean, you could watch this and think, see, it's proof that you shouldn't be charitable.
Yeah.
Give things away and things take. Yeah, in a way, you know, if you were to take that away from it. But also, I mean, it never tells the audience member anything other than to keep trying to be good.
Yeah, exactly. Because it also portrays the message of you can't always do right for doing wrong. There's some points in your life, whatever your actions are, there's always consequences. And I think that's the other takeaway from this. It's like it's almost picking the best consequence that has the least impact, rather than the one that's the most dramatic impact, even though it might be the one you want to take. Sometimes it's a different route you've got to take to get the best out of both worlds.
Yes, and I think, did they end by saying something like, if you can't be a good person, be a better person?
Yeah,
or
basically.
Something.
Yeah, try and be a better version.
Yeah, never be be a better person.
Just try to be better.
Which is a good thing to think about.
But it's also makes it manageable rather than trying to change anything dramatic that then doesn't work. And I think that's key as well.
Everything's key. It's always key.
I know.
You need a new saying. You could do merchandise.
One thing I'd like to say.
Is that's key.
One thing I'd like to say.
Is that's key.
No, one thing
I know, that's key. You can have 2 T-shirts made up of it.
Just the one thing.
I'll just say this one thing half an hour later. And another thing.
One thing you forget.
Another thing you forget. What did you think about the directing and how everything came together as a piece?
I thought it was directed well because there was a lot of entrances and exits, and everything felt natural in the entrances and exits. There was no
blundering about.
Well, not so much blundering, but there was nobody always coming on from one side or always coming on from another. It felt chaotic in a good way, as in it drew focus across the stage rather than, oh, that person always comes in from the top level, or that person always comes in from that level, or
They mixed it up, you mean?
Yeah, they mixed it
used
up.
all the entrances and exits they could,
Yeah.
even at the back and even at the top.
And I think when it's such almost an exposing space where you're in a thrust performance where the audience are surrounding the stage, to keep focus in that space, you've got to make people's eyes move across the stage. So you've got to have a moment where somebody will enter stage left, and they'll be front down stage right, or they'll be there, or they'll be there, and then it moves your eyes around, so you're not just staring blankly at the front of the stage and seeing people. It didn't feel linear.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we were looking at people right at the top near the strobe lighting, and then all of a sudden, in the corner of your eye on the left, there was a guy in a rat costume walking on. It's like, where did that come from?
Yeah, and it gave you that element. It made you feel like it was moving around the stage. They utilised it very well, and were very aware of that space, because it's very difficult sometimes to act in that way if you haven't got a director that guides that, I think, sometimes.
I really enjoyed the stylistic approach of using the auditorium members of staff to come on and change costumes, or help bring things on, like the rice cooker, bring it on, or take a mic off or something like that. That was quite good. Again, that felt like it was used as like a wink to the audience members to say, this isn't reality.
Yeah.
This is imitation of reality.
Yeah, exactly.
You know.
It was like we're playing at it, and we're just gonna
and
point the finger that we are playing at it, and this is
and I think that was evidence in the roles some of the actors played. Like there's somebody in a frog costume as well.
Yeah.
And even the gods, how they were speaking to each other, and just, do you know what? I quite like the fact that some of the gods just appeared out of the ball pits. Yeah. That was unexpected. But the fact that the director can think of clever ways of getting people onto the stage and also off a stage, and hiding the props within those ball pits, that was unique.
And I think as well, it's very easy to overuse something like those entrances. They didn't keep using it because it was a good thing to do. You got it once and it was memorable, and then they moved on to a different way of doing those entrances. So I think that worked really well. A little bit like the times when they were singing and the gods became the backing singers, and it was just those little nods to they're still there, but they don't always come from one space. They're all over the place as well.
I would say when it comes to the musical numbers, it was as if they were only singing half a song. Once they got into it, it wasn't like a great big scene change, but sometimes they needed a costume change or to move things about or to transition from one act to the next act. It then just snapped back out of it, so they didn't finish the whole song. It's just once they got into position, bang, the action went again.
Yeah.
That was quite good. However, I'm not quite sure the songs, even though there were songs meant to have been in this, so it's not new. I think it's been written or agreed with Brett for these lyrics to be in it. I don't know if it was the performances themselves which sort of let it down in a way.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It was it was like underdone. I don't know if that's because there wasn't a great big amount of audience members in there, but it just felt like a couple of people just singing in a corner of a room sometimes where no one's really paying any attention. Like there wasn't enough energy, or it wasn't a big build up or anything when it probably should have been more. But it just felt like it just wasn't.
I think for me it felt a little disconnected from the production. I think it sometimes it felt
ambiguous.
Yeah, a little bit ambiguous and sort of not close enough. Or I could see where they were going, but I think if they'd have made more of that karaoke style.
Did you actually feel like it was relevant to the actual story, or do you think?
No,
it was
I
just
felt like they were
sometimes?
trying. It was almost tagged on to remind you of what's just happened or talk about the same situation. And I just struggled with that repetitiveness, and I don't know if I see the need for the songs in a way at that point. And I think
I felt there was a bit redundant.
Yeah, a little. It did tend to maybe slow down the production a little, where we'd seen enough in the performance rather than the actual song bits.
And I'm not quite sure if I'm convinced on the singing. I thought some actors were good at singing, but some were far off the mark. A bit of it.
And I think for me, I think this is where it felt more like a middle ground of singing, in the sense of it's almost either got to be bad but good or good. It's either got to be bad for a reason, or, almost like your sort of performance where...
Yeah, because they did it like a karaoke, didn't they?
But it felt half-baked rather than it being a karaoke performance. It felt more in the middle ground of trying to be good, and I think that's where it was.
Yeah, was it meant to have been a karaoke or?
It was this hard to work it out because we didn't really know that that's what it was, even though that's what they were probably aiming for. But it just felt
Naff.
disconnected. Yeah, it just felt a little bit naff.
Moving on to our next segment, as we say, we're
Here for the drama.
Now let's talk about the acting. I felt there was some standout performances with all the cast. To be honest,
totally.
They always gave some great scenes and
They really did.
dialogues and delivery of the words. The script, and I think shout up to Amy Treadrier who played Shen Ti. I felt she was strong throughout.
I mean, for me, Melody Brown was brilliant in the in the two roles she played.
Yeah, she was
It was very much a shape-shifting role where she went from a posh businesswoman to a biker chick, and it was very evident that she'd switched and become another character. And I think that was well done. She definitely embodied two different characters. And I mean, for me, they all...
Well, the majority of them gave good performances.
They did,
Were really strong all
and
the
they
way.
did do more than one character apart from the gods. And I think the gods were very tight.
They were quite funny as well. They were.
Yeah, they really were.
I think the only bit I would have said was when Shen Ti put on a moustache to be Shu Tae. I felt that the voice could have been deepened a hell of a lot more or played up to it.
Yeah, there wasn't as much of a level change, or even if she was caught out when she was trying to be more butch and had a few moments of being caught out maybe with a higher pitched voice but then dropping down into a deeper voice, it would have helped give that distinction between the two characters a little bit more.
And I'll give a shout out to Louise May Newbury, who played the wife and Mrs. Yang. Her character started off in Rollers.
Yeah.
And she had a was it a Scouse accent?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was
yes.
Scouse.
Somebody else had another accent as well. She had a Scottish accent, didn't she?
Yeah, she did.
The other lady, she was just as good as well, to be honest. Or props and costumes. Do you want to?
Yeah, we can. I mean, you mentioned props and costumes where they were mostly in the ball pits. Apart from things that were brought on, there was a cake stand that was brought on for the wedding scene that had a revolve in it.
I never understood the need for the great big giant computer, because there were two versions of that. There was a small one, or that was a till or something, and then they wheeled on a second act, a big PC, which they threw the screen at somebody.
I think that was to depict the rising of the guy that got promotions within the company and went from just using small equipment.
Well, it was like the accountant.
It was almost, but he became deputy manager and then he became part owner, and I think that what he was showing.
But that was during a musical number.
Yeah, I think it was just to show his standing within the company, just to show how, it was like the extension of him. It was like, that now he's.
But that scene in itself could have been made more of.
Yeah.
Because it was wheeled in one door, went around the stage a bit, and then wheeled off the very next door.
Yeah.
Back out again, when it could have been.
It was like a fast forward scene, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it could have made more of that.
Yeah, and I mean, props wise, everything was used on stage. There was, I don't think there was anything that was out of place. There wasn't anything that was overused, or there was nothing on stage that didn't have a purpose. Everything we saw was used.
Even to the giant grabber hand that came down, and when the gods were there, I thought for a second the gods were just going to hold on to each arm and get lifted up. I thought,
sky,
that'd be good if it did, but I couldn't imagine that happening. And then when they attached these tiny little plastic babies to them,
with
I thought,
moustaches and glasses on to look like them,
it got a bit absurd and silly. But I suppose it's all part of replication and what.
Well, they stopped the apocalypse, and they had to show that the tiny babies and they're now otherworldly rather than in the real world. So
I would have thought like a trapdoor down or some light shone or whatever, and they went the other opposite way, or so. I don't know, but
they could have been abducted.
The whole point of the grabber was because they made it out to be like in a game.
They were saved
situation.
Basically, saved from the real world to back into the realm of gods.
Moving on to our next segment, as we say,
What the Tech Is This?
Now, I've just said about the music and it being quite reminiscent of an arcade.
Yeah,
game and stuff.
yeah.
Even the strobe light, and it was like ching 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 ching. Or
Yeah,
something every now
everything.
and
It
again.
almost felt like you were in one of the
Lucky winners
Japanese
of a jackpot.
Tokyo arcades, which was very hyper, full of a lot of flashing lights, full of a lot of noises, and like the Plinko machines in the sort of obsession with playing computer games. And I think it came across well in that respect. All the music was very electronic and very. It tended to give a nod to that. To Szechwan, really.
How did you feel the lighting, well, the technical aspect of everything? How was that handled? Did you appreciate it?
I thought it was done really well, and I liked the LED sort of backdrops of colour that were changing and different uses of that.
Yeah, I quite like that backdrop.
And the edging LEDs all the way around the stage. I thought that it gave a bit of a life to the stage, and when it hummed and throbbed on stage, it actually felt like it was a part of the action, and it made you feel like it was transporting. The only thing I would say is I felt there was some moments because, with this tonight's performance, it was probably a little less full than probably expected. So there was quite a lot of light on stage, so you could see that it was half. There was half of the seats were empty, which I think made it maybe feel a little flat because there was a lot of light around the audience, so you could maybe feel that there was less people in there to enjoy it. You could almost see their reactions, which sometimes is a good thing, but this time I think that if you darken the audience, sometimes you can react more because you don't feel exposed, and I think that didn't help this a little bit because you were unsure on how to react, or other people were obviously unsure on how to react.
I think that's probably down to the stylistic approach of it being a Brechtian play.
It was, because it's more about the it's as much about the audience as it is about the play in a way.
Yeah. And also they had a lot of use of dropping things from above. So not only did they have the grabber, they had two sides of a basket full of balls drop on the gods, and also the explosion of water that came down on one at the very beginning over the paddling pool.
Yeah, because that was the reference to do with it was talking about when he sold water and then it rains, people started catching their own, and it actually started to rain directly above him on his head, and it carried on raining throughout his dialogue, and I thought that was good because it was used really well at that point.
How would they have set that up for the water to have been released? What would have been on there?
It could have been something as simple as a shower head.
Yeah.
With a triggered pipe of water or box of water or something, container of water up there that was just used at that point to keep it localized. A little bit like the boxes of balls that dropped on the gods.
Yeah.
That would just be a
trapdoor thing.
A trapdoor or a tipper box that would have just had a trigger that just dropped them at a point in time.
And now it's time for Rewind Rewatch.
I don't know about you, but I'll gladly rewind the bit where the woman just kept sliding down onto the set each time. Every scene entrance she made, I'd just watch the entrance of that woman. Anybody sliding down.
Melody Brown's entrance every time, to be fair, because she slid down and just almost, even if people were in the way, she just let her body just slide down and then get up. And I think,
and there was like no urgency to get back up. She just, when she was down there, she just sat there smiling, and letting the audience laugh
just in the moment.
Yes. So that'll be for me. Is that what you're going with as well? Then is it?
I think for me, it's probably the gods' entrances and the use of the gods. I think that was a nice bit of comedy, and you saw them change throughout the production to become more dishevelled and rough around the edges. And
they're experiencing life on Earth, aren't they?
Yeah, they're not pure
anymore.
Not They've been dishevelled, shall we say? So I did enjoy that bit.
Yeah, they're certainly not happy. And
no.
In a way, I suppose that's what the play's about, not being happy about how things are going.
Moving on to our final segment, as we say,
Call this a show?
Okay, so the overall experience for this, if I'm just summing up now, I feel that it was a very interesting piece. I've never seen this show before, this play before. I'm well aware of Brecht and how he writes and the layout and what you're supposed to take away from it. And I quite enjoyed it for that aspect. I knew it was going to be different.
Yeah.
However, I would say I felt a little bit hit and miss. Every now and again, it would be like, oh, this is interesting. This is very bold, imaginative, and delightful. And then other times, it's like, oh, this is wearing a bit thin now. Move it on a bit. I'm not quite sure if I can relate that to the way in which they'd produced it or done it.
No. I think I enjoyed it as a piece, but I do think that it didn't shock or surprise me in the content. I think there was elements that they were well written, but I don't think it was anything that, say, pulled up roses. For me, it didn't put me on the edge of my seat where I thought I've never seen something like this before, but it very much felt like real life, which is probably the aim. And I just felt like there was a few disconnected moments where they maybe could have tightened it up, because I don't always think the songs maybe have needed, or if they'd have done them maybe better, even if they'd have turned them into sort of poems or poetry, it might have had more power than actually creating a song out of it. And I think that may be where I look at it in a different way.
Maybe. I couldn't help think back to when we saw Red Ellen.
Yeah.
It just felt slightly messy at times with putting a load of people on a load of things.
Yeah, we talk about chaos, and there did feel like there was some chaos, but unnecessary chaos a little bit sometimes.
Certain bits I understood.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
However, it just got to a point of ridiculousness sometimes.
Yeah.
In a way. So, Richard, can I have your scores then, please, for The Good Person of Szechwan? On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the best good person a good person can be, and 1 being the best bad person a bad person can be. What's it going to be?
I give it a 7 out of 10. There was a lot of strong performances, but I think there was just a few little bits that could have made it better.
Yes, I'm going to give this a 6. It was an interesting take, but I'm left feeling a bit lukewarm about it.
Yeah.
Positive, but just lukewarm, not really fussed.
So, what sound effect will you be choosing from the following? A complete train wreck? Tumbleweed? An audible shrug of the shoulders? A slow clap? A pleasant applause? Or a standing ovation? What will it be?
I give this a pleasant applause.
And I'll give it a pleasant applause as well.
So there we are. That's our discussion of The Good Person of Szechwan. We hope you found it insightful.
If not, entertaining.
Stay tuned as we bring you more of our thoughts
and opinions
on many theatrical delights in future episodes. If you'd like to get in touch, email us at upstagedownsstagepod@gmail.com. You can always join in the chat to share with us your views of a production.
Also, make sure to follow, share, like and subscribe to all our channels so you get every episode the second it's released. And we hope you join us again for another instalment of
Upstage Downstage.
On today's episode, we'll be discussing The Good Person of Szechwan. Does that sound right?
Szechwan.
On today's episode,
Szechwan.
On today's episode, we'll be discussing The Good Person. The Good Person. On today's episode, we'll be discussing the
Do you want
good.
to say a bit more like you're enjoying this? Got happy. On
Do you know what time it is?
On today's episode.
On today's
One
episode,
must be an art tour.
it's in its 80th anniversary. Brecht's. Is it Brecht's?
Brecht's.
Yeah, it's fine. Brecht's play is brought up to date in a new version. Brecht's play is
Brecht.
Brecht's play.
Carry on.
It's because it's in capitals, and fucking hell, I feel like.
Have you got ADHD or something
No,
else?
you just feel like
I think you've got something out. You've got
haven't.
something. You must have something. I can't be the only one.
New version in a new version by Nina Segal and directed by Anthony Lau.
And there's a Sheffield
This is
Theatres,
a yeah, but I've got
and
Dan. That's why I'm going a bit like what fuck. In a new version by Nina Segal and directed by Anthony Lau. This is a Sheffield Theatres ETC. Fucking hell, what's
ETT?
Right,
and Lyric Hammersmith Theatre production. So there's a lot of. You probably shouldn't have eaten all those.
I'm just windy.
When three gods reward her hospitality with a life-changing sum of money, Shanti opens a tobacco shop and claims the stability. No,
You said hospitality.
hospitality. I did.
Hospitality.
Hospital.
Fatality.
In the hustle and bustle of a modern-day metropolis, it's a dog-eat-dog world, and Shanti is doing all she can to get by. When three gods reward her hospitality and a life change. So, with all that said, let's.
Set this. Isn't that me?
Yeah, it could be. Whatever.
So there we are. That's our discussion of A Good Person of Szechwan.
A good person.
The good.
That you had a sound effect of like. Yeah, the sound effect of a shop door open.